So today we have both Lama and Daniel here. So
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here, Lama, and we look forward to Daniel's talk.
Yeah, I had some time, so wanted to see because important topic. Working with making recognizing things that need to be corrected and making relying on the right way, the supportive way, making amends. So I like to say that we're a community temple with whose goal is world peace through the focus of chaplaincy. Chaplaincy means like we're willing to reach out, uh, not wait just for people to come to us. So that's why I'm particularly fond of Green Tara, because she has her leg out ready to, she's in meditative equipoise, to use technical language, and she is extending, right? Extending herself like that. When we try to help others, we inevitably make mistakes, like that. So one thing that I'm happy to say is my teacher was, all my teachers, particularly my root one, learned very clearly how to say a few key phrases. I love you, and I'm sorry I made a mistake. Important phrases, don't you think? So that kind of blew me away at the time, because I always thought, well, enlightened beings don't make mistakes. Like that, right? So it's true, there's not making mistakes about okay, nature of the mind or emptiness or the self, but all kinds of mistakes on relative practical levels. Do you agree? Have to, because that's the only way we just kind of even though we might have the view and the motivation and the essential ideas, we everything has to be in a way negotiated. So it's of course these dance steps, and things go wrong. So that was the big breakthrough for me. It's like, okay, like that's really cool. So I still do a lot of Vajrasattva practice, and composed some new aspects on the Vajrasattva sadhana. I think we have some copies somewhere. We should get them. That integrates the Vajrasattva practice of confession and purification with a Dzogchen view. So maybe we can find that for next time. What do you think? Yeah, that would be good. So it's some people are good at rectifying things, but then it's very hard to then totally, make a fresh start. So the Mahamudra Dzogchen approach is totally integrating karma. In other words, the need to create good intention and work with the results, and totally fresh start and open dimension at the same time, right? That's kind of world peace. So I'm interested to see if we can have a good discussion. And Daniel says some maybe controversial things that he's going to have to back up. So that would be a good discussion. So I just have to say, classically, which I want you all to be trained in also, is the teacher just interrupts you. We're clear on that. I've probably already done that, so that shouldn't be a biggie. But of course, it can be annoying from a Western point of view, but I realized, my teachers were just doing me favors. But probably won't have to do that at all. It'd be brilliant. So I'm going to just stop here and please Please proceed, Daniel.
Thank you, Lamala. I appreciate you. I don't think I'm going to say anything too controversial here, but a good discussion would be nice. So I've been bouncing around this place for about 7 years or so, and I took refuge, or I entered the path rather 3 years ago, and then I took refuge a year later, um, back in 2023. And along the way, I ended up coming in here sometimes back when Dirk was still living here and doing the lunar practice with him. And at the time, the lunar practice was reciting the Vajrasattva 100 syllable mantra. And so I remember one time I showed up and it was the first time I think that I ever did this practice. I think I've told this story, but I love it. So I was sitting right over here, did the practice with Dirk, and afterward he kind of cornered me over there by the door and he said, "You know, Daniel, uh, there's really nothing magical happening here, and it's not going to get you high." Like he knew something, right? And I was like, I was kind of disappointed about that because I was like, dang it. Like that was actually the only reason I came to the lunar practice because it seemed like kind of like esoteric and there was something gonna be there for some magical element that would make me feel something different. And it did. I mean, he was right. Like it wasn't magical in the way that I anticipated, but it made me feel good, made me feel right. Yeah. Yep, sure. You can just take it. It's fine. Yeah, I appreciate that. Um, so I felt like it was nice. I kept doing the practice, and I even got to do the formal Vajrasattva practice with Dirk on several different occasions. And again, not like I didn't experience some kind of magical transformation. It was just like Dirk said, like I didn't get high and I didn't feel any kind of special magic or anything. And then fast forward to a couple of months ago, and my dear friend Jack, with whom I host a regular weekly talk show called Talk Openly, brought up the notion of maybe we could talk about the four opponent powers. And I was like, that sounds novel. I wonder what that is. I had no idea, even though the four opponent powers is it's the Vajrasattva practice, right? Um, and so, but it's just the more sort of it's not like necessarily like the religious aspect of it. It's just talking about the four opponent powers within the Vajrasattva practice. And once I discovered what it was, I was like, oh, that's really cool. Can we maybe instead of doing just one show on it, can we spread this out over like 4 weeks and do each of the powers 1 week and then, 1 week to one power, then so on and so forth. And there was sort of a selfish ambition there is because I was struggling with some repetitive behavior on my end, some habitual stuff patterning that was going on where I was like, this is going to be really helpful. I want this. And so the cool part about it is that we spent these 4 weeks practicing and talking about and learning about the four opponent powers. And that's where I discovered some magic. Like that was really cool. What I noticed was that very quickly, very, very quickly, these habits of body, speech, and mind that had been troubling me, vexing me so badly lifted very quickly. And I found that transformation, it felt radical and it felt magical. And so I cannot recommend this practice more. If you find yourself struggling repeatedly with the same troubles again and again, you're caught in like one of those samsaric loops where the same crap just keeps happening again and again and again. I think this might very well be the practice for you because it was for me. Um, so some of the sources for this talk, primarily they come from Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa and one of their students. This is Tupten Yeshe, not Lama Yeshe, but also Lama Yeshe, Jimpa. But one of their students, her name is, she's a nun in Australia. She goes referred to as Venerable Robina, I think, Robina. Uh, and I'd never actually heard of Venerable Robina until Jack brought her some of her works in to talk about. And I really thoroughly enjoyed her. She's down to earth and she's fun and like she gets into the nitty gritty stuff. I really enjoyed Venerable Robina. So when Lama asked me what I was going to be talking about, and I suggested that I might, talk about this topic today, he got kind of excited. It was cool. He was like, "Yeah, good. That's a good one." And then he started talking to me about disappointment, which was kind of odd because I was like, I didn't quite get what it was. Like, what's he on about? And he was talking about the disappointment felt perhaps by the historical Buddha, right? And so he mentioned, he says, yeah, Siddhartha probably, at some point had felt inadequate as a husband and a father, you know, and then he obviously became disappointed by the power and all the luxury of his royal life. And he was disappointed by the hard truth of old age, sickness, and death. He was disappointed by his own wandering ascetic practice, right? And then the interesting part is even after enlightenment, there was still disappointment, right? His cousin David Dada tried to kill him. His followers were arguing. Misunderstandings arose, and there was all kinds of division and difficulties within his community, within the Sangha. And so difficulty or disappointment rather continued to sort of show up throughout his life. And I was like, why? I literally I left that darshan with Lama and I was like, I brought up the four opponent powers. Why in the world did he go off and talk about disappointment? I don't quite get it. And so then I was like, I sat with it for a little bit, right? And reflected on it. And then it began to make a little bit more sense. And that's because disappointment is the starting point, right? It's kind of like that Leonard Cohen song that he sings, right? There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And so this starting point of disappointment, like that's a crack in our habitual perceptions that allows wisdom to enter. And it's like I think you could call it like the gateway to transformation. I like that one. So, because if we're disappointed, we can allow this disappointment, sort of our disappointment in our own selves, our disappointment in others, our disappointment in samsaric existence. We can feel sort of overwhelmed by it and kind of give in and be sort of cynical or wallow in self-hatred or guilt or whatever, all kinds of helpful reactions to disappointment. Or we can sort of use it as a motivator to look for a solution for something else. And, in that case, if we choose, we can follow the same path that the Buddha took on his journey from disappointment to renunciation to seeking a solution and finally unwavering commitment, dedication to enlightenment itself. And I think that my take on it is that journey of transformation, that's what we're talking about when we're talking about purification, that it's this never ending, or maybe not never ending, but it's a long process of transforming and purifying habitual patterns. So purification, what we're talking about, we're cleaning up all the crap that covers over our Buddha nature. And for some of us, it's going to take a while. One of the things that I think is kind of interesting to note is that if you've been around the Dharma for a long time, I haven't, but I've heard this, that if you've been around it for a while and you're disappointed by your own lack of progress on the path, then purification might very well be what you're looking for. And I want to read something from Lama Zopa here. He was actually talking about another teacher, Pabonka Rinpoche. He says, you might have heard this example used by Pabonka Dechen Ningpo. A rock might have been immersed underwater for a long time, but it still remains very hard and solid. Similarly, our minds have been around Dharma for a long time. We've been reading and listening to teachers for ages, but nothing has happened. There's been no change in our minds. We have no realizations, and our egos are just as big as they were before we met the Dharma, if not bigger. Perhaps our egos have become even more professional, more sophisticated, better qualified than they ever were. Anyway, I'm joking. However, if you've been meditating on the Lam Rim for a long time and feel no effect or no benefit, your mistake is that you have not practiced enough purification or collected enough merit. I was talking to my friend Marie yesterday at the Tonglen practice, and we were talking about being pickled in the Dharma. So rather than being like a rock, solid and impenetrable in the water, we want to be a bit more like a cucumber, right? A little bit more permeable, allow it to really penetrate deep inside. Also, so one of the sources that I refer to quite a lot when I was reading up on this was Lama Yeshe's book called Becoming Vajrasattva, The Tantric Path of Purification. I highly recommend it. It's a great book. He also echoes the same sentiment. He says, while insight meditation on the graduated path is the actual way to liberation, when you feel that you cannot meditate, there are too many interruptions, you cannot concentrate, you cannot solve your problems, remember that there is something else you can do to remove obstacles: purification. In the experience of Tibetan lamas, sessions of insight meditation on the path should alternate with sessions of a powerful purification practice, such as the yoga method of Haruka Vajrasattva. This combined approach ensures that you will gain the realizations you seek without frustration. And our own Lama, Lama Jimpa, he echoed this exact same sentiment when we were talking about this. And he said, it's a lot of people will think that just because they're doing sort of higher practices, maybe they're practicing one-pointed concentration, insight meditation, so on and so forth, that there won't be any more problems. They won't make any mistakes. He said it's kind of like people will have that thought similar to like love means never having to say you're sorry. And he made it very clear that that's not the case. As he just did earlier, right? That it continues, like we continue to make these mistakes, and that if we're making them, we need to purify them. That's the whole point. So Lama Zopa, in one of his teachings, he explains that Lama Tsongkhapa had asked Manjushri at one point, what's the quickest way to actualize realizations on the path to enlightenment? And Manjushri replied that there are 4 things. And he said, first, the first thing you do is you have to purify the obscurations. And obscurations can be purified because they're not in the nature of the mind. The mind's nature, its true nature, is Buddha nature. It is completely empty of existing in the way it appears to us. The more we purify the obscurations, the more realizations come. This is because of the power of the mind. In the West, it might seem like you have a mind. If you have a mind, then it has to have attachment. It has to have anger and ignorance. It has to have the self-cherishing thought. But the Buddha taught that the mind's true nature is totally free from attachment, anger, and ignorance. And the best purification is pleasing the guru. And then he says, everything depends on completely and correctly devoting to the virtuous friend. And I just want to point out that there were actually 3 other things that Manjushri told Tsongkhapa that about attaining these realizations on the path to enlightenment. Besides purifying the obscurations, the other 3 were accumulation of merit, making requests to the guru for blessings on the path, and meditation. So when I was speaking with my friend, my virtuous friend, Lama Yeshe Jimpa, about this topic, he pointed out something that's really important to consider, and that is that purification is not about somehow like magically making the obscurations disappear. It's not like they're just going to get erased through the purification practice. Rather, though, what happens is that we essentially bring these obscurations out of the shadows in front of us and up front so we can see them. And then we can work with them in a skillful way, hopefully, right? So keep that in mind, that purification is not some kind of just like magic thing that's going to make it all go away. Instead, it's actually going to bring it right up in front so you can smell it and see it. And that could be disheartening or disappointing, but it's the point of this practice. And I think that if you're engaged in it and you're having that experience where you're seeing these obscurations and it's a little unpleasant, a little stinky, a little ugly, something like that, that's good news. You're seeing it, right? Rather than being controlled by it from the shadows. So. All right, so I'm going to read a little bit more because before we actually get into the actual practice of purification, it's really important to talk about karma. And Venerable Rubina had some really good stuff to say about karma, and I'm going to read from that if that's all right. Yeah. Okay. So, what she says is, according to Buddha, everything we say, do, and think is a karma, an action that will necessarily bring a reaction, a result in the future. Every thought, word, and deed plants seeds in our minds that will necessarily ripen as fruit. Negative actions ripen as suffering. Positive actions ripen as happiness. There's nothing that living beings experience that isn't the result of what they've done before. With karma, there's no one sitting in judgment, punishing or rewarding us. Actions bring their own results. It just naturally happens, according to Buddha. Given the simple logic that we want happiness and don't want suffering, we learn to abide by the laws of karma, natural laws not created by anyone. What we are now is the result of what we have done, said, and thought before, and what we will be in the future is thus in our own hands. We are the boss. One might say that for the Buddha, karma is the creation principle. It's not enough, however, merely to refrain from creating negative karma. We need to take care of the karmic seeds already in our minds, planted there since beginningless time. Thus, we begin to have great respect and esteem for the four opponent powers, which can fully purify us as having to experience the results of our negative karma in the future, as Lama Tsongkhapa says in his Songs of Experience. Given that we've had countless lives in the past and that many of the karmic seeds in our minds from those past lives are likely to be negative, and given that suffering comes from negative karma and that we don't want suffering, it follows that we would want to remove the negative karmic seeds from our minds before they ripen. Purification is a psychological process. We create a negativity with our minds, says Lama Yeshe, and we purify it by creating positivity. The four opponent powers are, and this is where you're probably going to hear it for the first time today, the four opponent powers are regret, reliance, the antidote, and the promise. They, by the way, they go by all kinds of different names and are in different orders sometimes. So she says, first, we need to regret the harm we've done in the past to others because we do not want any more suffering in the future. We're fed up with suffering. Second, we need to rely upon the Buddha and his methods. We also rely upon the sentient beings whom we have harmed by developing compassion for them, aspiring to become a Buddha as quickly as possible, since only then can we really know how to benefit them. Third, we apply the antidote in the form of a purification practice. This is like taking the medicine for our karmic illness, and Buddhism has a medicine cabinet full of medicines. Finally, we make the promise, the determination not to create these negative actions, not to do harm again. We can hope, this is a quote from Lama Zopa, he says, we can mold our minds into any shape we like, and we would be insane not to do this practice on a daily basis. This is the beginning of renunciation, the first principal aspect of the path to enlightenment. I don't think anybody, I love the way that she presented that. It was so clear. So we have to have some faith in karma, right? That, you know, there's a natural outcome to our actions. There's a consequence to those actions. And if we have some understanding of karma, then that means that we can like take control of our lives and steer it towards this goal of enlightenment. So, like I mentioned earlier, the 4 R's, as they're sometimes known, they're not always presented in the same order. So they sometimes start in a different place, and they always sort of seem to end in the same place, but they start in different places. I actually like the way that Venerable Robina did it. Earlier Lama was talking to the meditation group, and he said that the first of the 4 powers is reliance. Venerable Robina actually starts with a regret, which is a pretty common one. So the order that I'm going to present it, if it's all right, is regret, reliance, remedy, and resolve. Okay. Are we ready to get into it? Yeah. All right, let's do it. So the power of regret. This is also, I'm going to give you some of the other names because I find that the other ways that they're referred to is pretty helpful because it gives you some insight into what they're talking about. So the power of regret is also known as the power of release, the power of repentance, and it's also known as recognizing the damage. The simplest and most straightforward thing that it's known as, though, is recognition of transgression and regret at its commission. And the Vajrasattva practice that Lama was just talking about a while ago, it breaks down the power of regret into these three separate R's. So the first R gets broken down into further R's, which I think is kind of cool. What it is the three R's rather are recognition, regret, and remorse. And even though I'm not going to read the whole sadhana, I do want to read some of the key points from the sadhana that I love. So, recognition, it says, we recognize our innate, indestructible balance, and we recognize that we are off balance. And then when it says under regret, it says, I have in some way become preoccupied with my misperceived self and lost sight of my Buddha nature. I have allowed the profound openness of the sky to slip from me, and in so doing, I have misstepped into unbalance. I have lost my way, and my actions have even caused grief to others. And then remorse. My heart aches as I see clearly through what I've done. Betraying those virtues I hold most closely to my heart. I cannot walk this path that causes sorrow any further. Beautiful. So sometimes one of the common ways that the teachers throughout the ages have talked about these four R's is using the metaphor of accidentally drinking some poison. And so we'll come back to this idea again throughout the rest of the talk about, somehow you discover that you just ingested some poison, right? And you have to know that you just did it. No matter how it came about, you have to be like, oh my God, I drank some poison, right? Like that's the first thing. That's that initial sort of recognition, right? Like, oh no. And then you have to realize like, oh, I drank poison. That's going to lead to some suffering, right? Like it's fine. Maybe it's just your own suffering. Like that's all that's going to happen. You did something. You don't want to suffer, but you drank some poison. So it's like, oh God, no, I don't want this, right? And you would never, if you recognize that you drank some poison, you would never be like, just chill about it and relax and be like, nah, I'll take care of that later, right? How would you react if you drank some poison immediately? Right then, you'd want to do something about it, right? You don't want the poisonous effects to linger. And you might actually kind of reflect on how it came about that you drank the stupid poison, right? Did somebody dupe you into it? Were you just ignorant? You didn't know what you were doing? You might reflect on that a little bit as part of this initial process. So I really like, so the Tibetan term, I'm not even going to try it. I didn't even write it down for the power of regret, right? Because I can't say it. But the translation of the term is the power of putting the blame. And at first I was like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't think that doesn't seem right. But it's not actually talking about blaming ourselves or somehow hating ourselves, right? With like guilt and shame and all of that. That's typical. That's the norm. That's sort of how I was brought up, right? Like you make a mistake and then you wallow in guilt and shame and all of that for a long time. And that's not what this is about. This isn't some kind of like emotional self-punishment. It's just this like clear acknowledgement, right? We made a mistake. I don't want to have this suffering. It's that simple. It's very clear. It's not this wallowing around, right, that we have a tendency to do. And again, I'm going to read from Venerable Robina. She says, but what's regret? The Dalai Lama's answer to the question, what's the difference between regret and guilt, is so helpful. With guilt, he said, we look into the past and go, I did that and I did this and I'm a bad person. With regret, however, the first point is the same. We look into the past and acknowledge what we did, but then we think, what can I do about it? Guilt seems to be our default mode. We just assume my having done something wrong means I'm a bad person, and we rarely question this assumption. It's terrible, and it's simply not true. It's an exaggeration. But regret is a healthy, self-respectful attitude. If I've eaten poison, the second I realize it, I'd regret it because I don't want suffering, and immediately I think, what can I do about it? So the key to regret is recognizing that everything that we do, everything that we think, everything that we say has some kind of effect, right? It's going to. And if we do something that's negative, there will be suffering, and we don't want that. It's that simple. I really like the way that Tupten Chodron, she put it very simply. Regret is more rational and constructive. We see the act was wrong, wish we had acted otherwise, and aspire to find solutions. All right. So one of the key things about karma is that it has a tendency to multiply, right? If we leave it alone, it grows and grows. And so this opponent power here is about like kind of owning our mistakes. It opposes that growth, right? It's the it prevents the seed sort of from multiplying out of sight, right? That's the whole point about bringing it into the light so that we can do something about it. So in the his book about the Lam Rim, called "The Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand," Pabanka Rinpoche, he talks about how Atisha would, if he noticed a transgression, like let's say he was riding his horse or something, and he noticed a transgression, he would immediately he'd get off of the horse, get down, and purify it right then and there. I think that that's how we want to be with it. My friend Jack actually talked about this, I think, in a way that was really helpful. Um, that it's kind of like the trajectory of like a rocket, you know, that if you are off just like half of 1 degree in the beginning, and the rocket goes on and on and on, you're gonna miss your target, right? It's gonna be way out of sight by the time you're supposedly supposed to reach your destination. You're not gonna hit your target. And so the sooner you catch it, the easier it'll be to correct course. I thought that was really a helpful analogy. So there's a short Vajrasattva practice that was created by Lama Zopa, and the editor of that noted that Atisha practiced in this way because of his deep realization of the psychomechanics of negative karma, especially its four fundamentals. And I think this is worth noting, right? So the four fundamentals of this karma, this negative karma, is that negative karma is certain to bring suffering. It multiplies exponentially. If eradicated, it cannot bring its suffering result. And once created, it never simply disappears. So that recognizing the operation, these aspects of karma will help us in the process of purification. Lama Zopa himself said about this multiplication of karma, he said, if you don't purify it in this way, your negative karma will keep doubling and redoubling day by day, week by week, month by month, and year by year up to the end of your life. And even one day's negative karma will become as huge and heavy as a mountain. In time, even one atom of unpurified negative karma can swell to the size of Earth. It's like credit card debt. So there's an aspect of karma. So one of the things about these four opponent powers, one of the things that I wondered anyway is like why they're called opponent powers. And one of the explanations has to do with these four different aspects of karma, these different kinds of effects of karma, and that each one of the opponent powers is designed to target or oppose or purify one of those aspects of karma. So this first one, regret, it counteracts or purifies or opposes the aspect of karma called experience similar to the cause, right? So experience similar to the cause is about it, like it weakens the tendency of needing to repeat that again and again, right? Like so it's like purifying the tendency underneath it so that we don't have the same kind of karmic effect happening again and again. Okay. So what kind of things are we purifying? I thought this was one thing that was really quite difficult for me in the beginning. I was like, where do I even start? Like, what is it that needs to be purified? I mean, I guess that's actually not quite true. I knew immediately what I needed to purify. That's why I was interested in it, right? But it does actually, if you're doing this on a daily basis, it can sometimes feel like you're like, I didn't do anything wrong today. I did, things are fine, right? I wasn't a bad person or anything. What do I really need to like clean up here? But there's like, if you really sit with any of this and reflect on it on a daily basis, I promise you, you'll find something, right? If not now, you can reflect back on, previous lives possibly, right? Venerable Robina mentions like, well, maybe think back to when you were a whale, and you with one gulp you swallowed 100,000 different sentient beings and you didn't even think about it. I thought that was kind of fun. But typically, what you could use as like a structure for like what it is that you want to purify are known as the 10 non-virtues. And so these are actions of body, speech, and mind. So killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, those are the body ones. Speech are lying, divisive speech, harsh speech, and pointless gossip. So the non-virtues of mind are greed or covetousness, wanting what's not yours, desiring something that your neighbor has. Harmful intent and wrong view. I think there's plenty of room for exploration within each one of those to see how you yourself might want, like some of the things that you've done that you might want to purify. Um, the other thing that I think is kind of neat, I was talking to Lama about this, is that uh, sometimes in some situations, it might not be clear. It might sometimes what it is that you regret is a situation itself. It's not necessarily just like, oh, I did something bad. Sometimes what we regret is something that's happening, a dynamic that's at play. And this is really, really helpful. These going through these 4 R's with a situation will open things up in a rather interesting way to see what you yourself like, not just like your role in it, but opens it up like, all right, well, what can I do about it? So it's not always so straight simple as like, oh, I've sinned and I need to like, clean that up. No, it's there's all kinds of things to regret. So just want to reiterate that regrets usually oftentimes considered the first step in the purification process. Regardless, the whole point is not about feeling bad about ourselves. That's not the point. We really want to empower ourselves to change. So sometimes the power of reliance, which is the second of these 4 powers, sometimes that one is presented first. Okay, but I'm covering it second here. And it goes by these other names. So the power of reliance is also called the power of the object, power of dependence, power of support, power of restoring the relationship. And again, there's one that's like really straightforward and kind of summarizes the whole thing. And that's my favorite. It's the power of taking refuge and generating bodhicitta. Very simply put, it's about focusing on our positive intentions and healing or restoring the connections that we have, both with ourselves and with other people. So in the Vajrasattva sadhana, I want to read to what it says here about reliance. So there's more to it here, but this one simple line is my favorite. It says, with refuge, we take steps off the unbalanced path and the first steps on our return to balance. This is our safe direction. So we go back to like the poison metaphor, right? You recognize you drank some poison. Oh no, I don't want to do that. I don't want the suffering that's going to come from drinking the poison. What are you going to do? Like call poison control, maybe, right? You're going to like figure out, obviously, you got yourself into the situation, but like, how are you going to get out of it? Does somebody else know what needs to happen in order to fix the problem and make things better? So past that, maybe you were at a party and you were sharing the poison, right? And some other people drank the poison. So you might take it to the next step and be like, well, I need help for myself and I need help for everybody else who drank the same poison. And so this is kind of like the 12-step thing, right? Where we have to rely on a power greater than ourselves. And so, there's any different ways that we can do this, but we're mostly Buddhist practitioners here, I believe. And so we want to rely on the guidance and the inspiration of the Buddhas. And also the bodhicitta aspect is relying on our intention to have good, healthy, strong relationships with other beings as well. So one of the aspects of the power of reliance is that it purifies negative karma associated with our spiritual commitments. So if our vows are weakened or broken, then this is the aspect of the four powers that tackles that. So Lama Yeshe says in Becoming Vajrasattva, the Tantric Path of Purification, that's that book I was telling you about. He says, it's called the power of dependence because our recovery depends upon the object that hurt us. For example, to get up after you have fallen over and hurt yourself, you depend upon the same ground that hurt you. Similarly, almost all the negative karma we create has as its object either holy objects or sentient beings. In order to purify it, we take refuge in holy objects and generate bodhicitta for the sake of all sentient beings. I love that. That's pretty fascinating, right? Yeah, you fall down. Now you got the very thing that you tripped on, right? And now you got to use that to get up. Love that. So when it comes to generating bodhicitta, there's a number of different methods. I remember one time I was talking to Lamala about this, and I was like, well, he was like, well, just you got to generate bodhicitta. I was like, what? How? What am I supposed to do? Like, it doesn't feel authentic. It doesn't feel genuine. I don't know how to even get the ball rolling on this. And he told me, like, yeah, you can start by simply reciting the four immeasurables, right? Which we did here at the outset. So I think that's a great place to start. I still do that on a regular basis and find it really helpful. But there's some of the other things that we can do to generate bodhicitta. I won't go over all of these in great detail, but we can contemplate the suffering of other beings and see how our suffering and theirs is not all that different. We can recognize our shared wish for happiness, like we all want to be okay, right? It's similar. We can practice loving kindness and compassion. There's different methods of doing that. We can use Lojong mind training slogans. And I just want to put a plug in here for Dirk's random Lojong slogan generator on the Lion's Roar website. Super helpful. Jack and I use that every single week, and I oftentimes use it on a regular basis as well. It's awesome to just pull up a random Lojong slogan and to reflect on what's said about it. And we can remember the kindness of others, about how it, in order for us to exist, all kinds of beings and strangers have to do what they're doing in order for us, to survive the way that we do, to live the way that we do. And last, but definitely not least, is some exchanging self with others, Tonglen practice. And I want to put another plug in there for my friend Marie, who leads the Tonglen practice online. Absolutely wonderful practitioner of Tonglen, someone who's helped me a lot with the Tonglen practice. So remember I was talking about the different kinds of karmic results that these are like opponent powers. So this particular power of reliance, it addresses what's known as the environmental result of our negative karma. And so this is like how, for example, like if you're lying, for example, you're going to end up living in a place of distrust, right? Where you don't trust other people, what they say to you, or, you'll have all of these misgivings because you yourself lied. And so it changes the environment. I heard it said it's sort of like an oak tree, right? Talking about karmic seeds and how an oak tree, once it's actually, developed, it has changed its environment. It has now shaded things so that other plants can't grow. Its roots now are going in places, preventing other things from growing and breaking things open. So it's like that. That's what we mean by this environmental result of karma, and that's what the power of reliance opposes, is that aspect of it. And I think it's unmistakable that if we align our minds with the three jewels, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, then we will in fact experience a world that's more positive and more pleasant. All right, so let's move on to the third.
We want to leave time for some discussion too,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Thank
Yeah.
you so much, Lama.
Yeah.
I'll move through it very quickly then. We're power of the remedy. This is the antidote itself, right? And so using the poison metaphor, this is, you take something, you drank something wrong, bad, maybe you get some activated charcoal, or you get some medicine, or you get some kind of thing that you need to do in order to resolve the problem. That's what the power of the remedy is. And it's really about engaging in virtuous actions, and not just any kind of virtuous actions. It's specifically if we can intentionally sort of aim those virtuous actions at our mistake. So if you make a mistake with body, then perhaps use a remedy that is uses the body as well, such as prostrations, for example, right? If you made a mistake with your speech, then perhaps you could do some mantras. One of the ultimate sort of universal remedies is Vajrasattva practice. And if you want to do Vajrasattva practice and you haven't done it in the past, I encourage you to talk to Lamala about that. I also, even before that, I think even just listening to the 100-syllable mantras, there's some beautiful singers out on YouTube that do a really good job. Even that can be really positive. And it doesn't have to be super religious or spiritual either, right? Like we can engage in any type of virtuous behavior, especially if we have the intent, like we want that virtuous behavior to counteract a mistake that we made. And most importantly, that we dedicate any merit from that to the benefit of all beings, right? That's what we want, or not just to the benefit of all beings, but rather to the purification of that one mistake, and then extend that out to all beings. So that's the power of the remedy. Last but not least, power of resolve, also known as the promise not to repeat, or my favorite, the power of indestructible determination. So you drank some poison, it's all better now, right? You took the remedy, you got some help, all of that. Now, like, just don't do that again, right? Like, it's like that clear. It's not like some kind of vow. It's not like some deep like commitment. It's really just like clear. It's based on intelligence. I messed up. I don't want that suffering. I'm not going to do this again. It's like that. There's nothing else to it, right? And I am going to read the Vajrasattva part of this though, because from the sadhana, the remedy. I mean the resolve. Sorry. Here we go. Love this. Guided by the wisdom mind of perfect freedom, from this moment on, without hesitation or reservation, I will abstain from all the errors that I can abstain from, and I will abstain from those that are extremely difficult for me to abstain from, for 1 day, 1 hour, 1 minute, or at least a few seconds. And it's important to be reasonable with yourself. If you think that this mistake, like there's a good chance you have this habitual pattern or whatever, and it's just going to keep showing up, and you kind of know that, then make it short, make it real, and make it achievable. It doesn't have to be some grand gesture, just a little thing. And I will stop there. And if Lama has anything to say, or if you have questions, then we can entertain those.
Ahung, very thorough. Thank you. Yeah. A little bit, just the framework is when Venerable Rabina and Lama Zopa are talking a little bit from what we would call individual liberation or Hinayana point of view. So we're looking at, which is obviously essential, we're looking at, karma and things from individually impacting ourselves. The Mahayana point of view is going to have an emphasis on relationship and openness also. And then the Vajrayana point of view is going to have an emphasis on transformation. And then when we're looking at the Mahamudra Dzogchen view, I could say as, the complete liberation aspect. And we can work through all different aspects, but so I just want to, the four powers to, it's a process primarily, I think, of transformation. So how can we heal and transform relationships and our activities that will lead to like liberation like that. So I want people to be able to work through conflicts and make apologies, but not always, it won't always be from a catechism point of view, you know. I want to always be from individual liberation point of view. It can be from, that doesn't mean we don't have to work with people directly, but it's really not enough to just do the solo Vajrasattva practice in most cases when it involves relationships. We have to like actually meet with people and talk things through, and the remedy could take time, over time, right? So these practices sound like they can be presented in a way that they're kind of magical. Like you just do this and then you clean up the karma and stuff like that. These are templates that are easier to talk about than do. A lot of times it takes a long time to work out things that are we feel disappointed or some breach, right? So when we say doing the round, it's very rare that it's a one-off. Things are pretty okay, then you can go, well, I'm sorry, and the person, I'm not gonna will be better, and then go, okay, I'm sorry. But many of the intractable conflicts that we see are not so simple. Take a lot more dedication than Ven Rubina would probably be willing to involve herself in. I'm interested what people have to say.
I've always had this question. Let's say you've hurt someone, but you don't know them enough so you can actually apologize. Can your own practice of Vajrasattva be transferred to them so they, what you said could have affected them for the rest of their life, but instead they will magically feel better?
I'm always open to magic. Magic is magic because it doesn't always work. That's the important part about magic, So cause and effect always works, but sometimes magical works. So of course, developing even for people that have passed on or we won't see again, sending out I wish things to be repaired can have an enormous effect with us, and like you never know. So that's always a good thing to do. Yeah, absolutely.
Looks like we've got a Zoom comment from Ellen.
Hi, Daniel. Thank you for your talk. It's fabulous. What I'm still curious about is you mentioned in the beginning that when you started doing this practice that you did experience some magical results, but you didn't really give us details of that. Not that you need to share the details, but I'm curious if you would share to what you attribute the magic happening. What did you do differently? at that time that you think you didn't do before, if you have a sense of cause and effect for that magic?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's the power of the process. So I was stuck in the ordinary sort of guilt and shame that's part of the habitual patterning, and that wasn't helpful. It wasn't getting me out. And then by diligently and repeatedly, regularly applying these four opponent powers, the results were incredibly quick. Things that have been with me for decades, like lifted very quickly. And I'm not suggesting that they're gone. I'm just saying that they're like, for whatever, you know, this stuff works, right? And this process was incredibly effective. I did cheat a little bit, Ellen. So you guys might not like this, but I used ChatGPT. So what I did was I uploaded a bunch of these source material into a custom GPT, and then I used it to communicate. Like I would be like, all right, so this is what's going on, and it would give me feedback, and I'd be like, oh, all right, and it would be the feedback was based upon all the stuff that I was, you know, that I'm quoting here. And so it was really helpful. There were times it moved me to tears where I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe, like, I wasn't thinking about it like this, but this is clearly it, right? So yeah, that's how it worked, Ellen.
That's cool. And what I hear under that is that it's just sort of shifted you out of a unproductive behavior pattern and thought pattern to one that was productive. And it made a big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
So I don't really have a question. I just want to comment. Thank you so much for that wonderful talk, and you made it so clear and easy to understand, and complete with examples and analogies. So I really appreciate it. That really helps with my taking in information. So thank you for that. And I just wanted to say, in the beginning, you said something to the fact that you selfishly wanted to explore the four powers, or
Yeah, the four
Yeah.
opponent powers.
yes, yes. And I just wanted to say that to me, that's not selfish, because anytime you want to work on yourself and hopefully improve, makes you a better person. And so that helps everybody. So I don't see any selfishness in that at all. That's all I wanted to say.
Maybe it's something like the Dalai Lama would call like wise selfishness. Thank you.
Back to Zoom for Dirk. Dirk, you're on mute.
Yeah, I know I'm having a hard time. Well, I'm surprised that I don't remember telling you that it wasn't magical, but given my own view of what magic might be, that since everything is interdependent, that any action I take is going to have an effect somewhere, somehow. Anyway, I thought your talk was great, and anytime people want to talk about Vajrasattva, I'm always happy. And I must say that I have always sort of felt that since first being introduced to Vajrasattva, that it seemed like it, given that we aren't don't believe in original sin, and instead we believe in original purity, that in a way the only thing we need is Vajrasattva practice, because if all of the uh, all of the no, I can't think of the word for it. The adventitious, if all of the adventitious stains upon us, or the only thing that's stopping our Buddha nature from being fully manifest and revealed in our day-to-day world, then all we need is Vajrasattva. Anyway, thank you for your talk, and for the reminder to do more Vajrasattva practice.
Thank you, Dirk. Thanks for introducing me to Vajrasattva practice. And that comment was incredibly helpful, even if you don't remember it.
I'd like to, use, added some things to the sadhana, Vajrasattva that Daniel quoted from. So some people might find that useful. Happy to. The high-level Vajrasattva practice and Dharma practice is how we can deal with what I call Greek tragedies. Greek tragedies are when there's a dilemma. There are two people that are coming from good intention, and the inevitability is that one of the parties has to make a choice, or a choice is made for them, right? So there's a real feeling of tragedy. And the normal kind of Hinayana approach to doing Vajrasattva practice doesn't work, because it's not so easy to just say, well, that was a fault and I'll purify that. It's a no-fault tragedy, which is the ones that are very difficult to work with, and that I hope we can work with at Lions Roar also. And of course, there's ongoing tragic situations that are not so easy that we can just identify, pull one person aside, pull Netanyahu off to one side and Putin to another side and Trump to another side and say, you need to do Vajrasattva practice. So I look to my teachers and Dalai Lama and people that have received teachings from, like the Karmapa and Dudjom Rinpoche, and how to deal with vast kind of conflicts where there's no simple, easy resolution. The Hinayana approach, like Lama Zopa approach, which is beautiful, and Venerable Babina's, but it looks like you can just kind of clean it up real easy. It's a long, long process of working through that I know we have to do if we're going to have a fun planet to live on and not cause more suffering. So, as a Sangha, that's why I'm delighted we're doing chaplaincy practice, which means that we're working with lots of times insolvable situations in chaplaincy that don't have a clear cut kind of thing. And for me, that is a high level purification or liberation practice like that, that I hope we can strive for. What do you think? Yay. Greg, I didn't forget you, Greg.
Thank you, Daniel and Lama. I have a comment. One thing I thought when you were talking about resilience and you mentioned the ground, when you fall, it hurts you, but you need it to get back up. And for some reason, that made me think of like jobs. Basically, jobs wouldn't exist if things worked perfectly. Like a job is there because something's messed up and someone needs to oversee it and make sure it gets fixed. And I wonder if that, like, if you develop this practice, you can make more comfort in like, and you in the general sense of like, okay, my role on paper is to do this, oversee this process that should work. A goes to B to C, but then the reality is A goes back to Z and tries to work its way through the alphabet backwards before getting to B, and maybe just more acceptance of like, okay, it's a messy, convoluted process and people are sometimes very hard to work with. I'll stop there. Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you, Greg. Lama?
Are you still doing your same job, Greg? Yeah, so that's one of those situations where if you're working with cleaning up toxic environments and environmental stuff, that it takes extraordinary patience with competing interests. And I'm just really delighted with your patience and keeping through that. That's real Vajrasattva in action, I think. Oh, Linda's going to get the last word. Good.
I think I work with the same people Greg does. You reminded me of a quote by Carl Jung, and it was the first one. It was it regret? People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And we know that already with 12 step, that the first step is just to acknowledge what's going on. I think that's sometimes so incredibly hard for people, just to see things that don't fit who they want to be. How do we help them?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I had that feeling one time. I still have that feeling, but I had that feeling once. And I was talking to Lama about it. I said, I need this stuff is working. It's so helpful. I need to teach everybody. I need to teach my kids, and I need to teach my family, and I need to teach everybody. I need to show them all of this. I need to help them. I need to help them. And then he gave me a quote, St. Francis quote. He just said, at all times preach the gospel. Use words as a last resort. Right? So do the practice. I think that's how you do it, right? You do this work yourself. That's the best way.
All along.
Thank
So
you.
let us continue to work with situations that can be purified, and let us work with situations that will take a long, long time. What do you think? And for the long haul. Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Lama, for being here. Just a few reminders quickly. Next Saturday, 8 a.m., we have meditation half day led by Lama. Retreat is coming up. If you've not signed up for retreat, please do so. It really helps with planning when you sign up early. And Susan has come closer.
Susan has a pros.
Just to say that on the back table in the library are cards for the 5 people that are taking refuge next Sunday. And so if you would please sign them and welcome them as fellow Dharma brothers and sisters. Thanks.
We also have our tablet here for taking donations, and then Dharma items that were donated to the Lions Roar by various people actually over the years. So they are practice items. We're offering them for donation. So please, peruse and make a donation and add to your Dharma collection. Lama said, I think very pointedly during the Tantra class, you don't need the best thing. You don't need the most expensive thing. So, practice item is practice item. If it works, it works.
If we're doing Tantra practice and you have a rupa sacred form, then just being kind of traditional, then of course you ask your teacher to bless it. Bless it means you're you're connecting the form with the teachings and with your personal relationship. So it's clear we're not taking refuge in the object, right? Because sometimes, just to follow up on Connor said, sometimes people always pick the most beautiful objects and they're venerating the object. But we use art and objects so that we may remember our connections with each other, don't you think? So it's traditional. It's like, oh, I donated to the temple and I have this satsa, please, will you bless it? And it's not like blessing is an outer thing. It's just basically saying, oh, may we think of each other when you have this in front of you. Isn't that nice? Let's do dedication.
All right. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain a state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow. May that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. In the land encircled by snow mountains, you are the source of all happiness and good. All powerful Chenrezig Tenzin Gyatso, please remain until samsara ends. May the teachings of the Buddha flourish. May the upholders of the teachings remain forever. May all migrators achieve happiness, and may they fulfill all their temporary and ultimate goals. Losong, magical display of the deep awareness of all the victorious ones, merciful giver of a stream of profound and vast instructions to the fortunate migrators, please remain always unperishing, unchanging, unfading. Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of objectless compassion, Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, Vajrapani, destroyer of the entire host of Maras, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the snowy land sages, Losun Drapa, I make request at your holy feet.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to hang out for a little bit. So even though I don't think we're doing a meal, but it's so good to see everyone. I'm glad I had the opportunity to come here today and do Vajrasattva in action, right? Yay.
Omo araya pacayana indi Om araya pacana indi Om